Tonight, in the last in the present series of the Magic and Mystery Show, we analyse the incredible healing powers of Matthew Manning. I get to meet a man who claims he's been to heaven and returned with a divine gift, and explore the mythical legends relating to Lucky Talisman. But Lynn Bowles' first investigation takes her to East Anglia.
Matthew Manning claims he is able to heal people, not through medicine or surgery, but by helping them to heal themselves. And he does it by the laying on of hands.
The first time that he put his hands on my shoulders, and I get teary when I think about this, but I felt all the love that I had never felt in my life at times that I should have felt it.
He gives off some kind of power, and I felt, I warmed to that power.
Just as some people have a gift to be able to paint, others have a gift to play a musical instrument, I have a gift to heal. No one knows why it is that certain people have certain gifts, but I do feel very much that it is an energy that comes from outside rather than from within. I'm always being asked, what do you think that energy is? The answer is, I don't know.
Mysterious though it is, some people say they have been healed. 11 years ago, Richard Frost injured his back in an accident at work.
Like many of the people that have written to me, he had been the orthodox medical route and they had not been able to help him. He was in considerable pain. He was sometimes walking on crutches, sometimes he was in a wheelchair.
Anyway, eventually we got an appointment with Matthew and I came here and I just seemed to fall apart when I got here, and I knew somehow that he was going to do me good. When he first put his hands on my hip, I felt pretty good inside, a warm feeling. And then after that session, I wouldn't say that I could walk properly, but I thought, well, here you go. I'm going to try and make this work.
It wasn't something that happened just miraculously. I worked on that over a period of time. He found that each time he came, the period that he was lasting pain-free was becoming longer and longer until eventually it had gone altogether.
My whole life has changed. I feel a new man since meeting Matthew.
Come on, Bella, we'll go.
People seek Matthew's help for all kinds of ailments. Jane Allison came to him after having surgery for cancer.
Jane is somewhat of a different problem because she's had breast cancer, so therefore I sort of keep working with her until we don't need to anymore. It's not just what I'm doing with my hands, it's also a matter of what I'm doing with people psychologically and emotionally.
It's as if my heart has opened. I know that sounds funny, too. I mean, people talk about that, heart chakras, and I don't know about all those things, and it always seems sort of cranky to me, a little. But my breast cancer has remained stable.
I start by placing my hands on someone's shoulders. I do that because it helps me to gain an attunement with them. I feel very strongly that quickly there is a point where there's no longer them and me, but we become completely merged. From research that I did 20-odd years ago, where my brainwave patterns were measured simultaneously with those of the person I was trying to influence, when I felt that we'd gained an attunement, our two sets of brainwave patterns became totally synchronized. So I think something's happening physiologically. There is some kind of connection. I then feel there is an energy which flows through me. I don't feel it comes from me. Usually, I get a sense of tremendous heat in my hands. However, sometimes I sit there, I don't feel a thing, the other person is nearly incinerated. And the strangest thing of all, when I had thermocouples attached to my hands and they measure temperature changes very, very sensitively, even when I and the other person reported a great sense of heat, there was no change in temperature.
For years, Matthew, like other healers, was investigated by the scientific community. Some of the tests carried out seemed to show that he could indeed influence living cells, but Matthew would be the first to admit that not everyone who comes to him does indeed get better, which is why this type of healing remains such a controversial subject between scientists and the medical profession.
I believe that people have a potential which they're not using. They use part of their potential, and it's known that if someone's child is under a car, that people can lift the car, whereas if you ask them to lift the car, they're not able to do that. So that potential is being utilised. And it's possible that Matthew helps us to utilise our potential that's already there to heal ourselves.
I feel very much this is an ability which latently we have all got. One of the most interesting experiments in which I ever took part was in the early 1970s, where a group of scientists in Canada were interested to find out what, if anything, was going on in my brain whilst I was engaged in what they called paranormal activity. They claimed that there was a brainwave pattern emerging. It had a very particular formation. They'd never seen anything like it before. However, with the use of a very sophisticated computer, they were able to source the brainwave pattern back to a specific part of the brain. It was the oldest, most central, most primitive part of the brain. And that led me to wonder whether maybe what I'm doing is a throwback to a time when, in the absence of the technology we now have, we had a much greater need to find food, water, shelter, direction. So therefore we were forced much more to rely on our intuition. And I strongly feel that every advance that we've made technologically over the centuries has actually stripped us of another layer intuitively.
So it may be that through to evolution we're not using these parts. We've lost contact with them. They're still there. But if we're sick, we go to the doctors, or if we need to use things in the modern process of life, which is very fast, we don't go back to these basic instincts. And therefore Matthew may be honing in on these and helping us to get in touch with them again.
One of the big reasons for trouble with the paranormal is that you can't explain things. So scientists are embarrassed, and most of them back off from it for that reason, because they don't like to deal with a field of endeavour which doesn't seem to include the possibility for explanation. Now, there are quite a few courageous people who have gone in and tried to explain it, and this is, of course, what scientists should do.
The sorts of things that I do, and there are other people doing similar things, are enormously threatening. And if you've got a belief system that has held that certain things behave in a certain way, and this is what makes the world go round, if some guy comes along and turns that belief system upside down, it's extremely threatening. One of the things that amuses me is that every week somebody asks me what kind of healer I am. You know, are you a faith healer? Are you a psychic healer, a spiritual healer, a crystal healer, a colour healer, a Reiki healer? There's endless kinds of healing. And I've always said I'm just a healer. So far as I'm concerned, the source of all healing is the same. It comes from upstairs. So therefore, to put labels on it doesn't serve any purpose. But people like a label on it because once they can say, well, he's a faith healer, then it's in that little box and they don't have to think about it anymore.
The other thing is, of course, it doesn't obey the same laws as ordinary science does. And I think we just don't know what is really controlling the paranormal. And some of the early investigators said that what we're actually doing is sort of nibbling on the edge of something. And you can't get into the middle of it because we don't know where the middle is.
Sometimes when I'm working, you can't begin to put it into words, but you just get that feeling where you're totally connected with the universe. And you just sometimes feel that pure joy or almost ecstasy going through you.
I think this energy that Matthew exudes, and it is an energy, has something to do, well, I have to say love, but you see, there just aren't any other words.
He did make me a lot stronger in the mind to overcome this whole thing. And I feel that, yes, he probably did, you know, strengthen my mind so much that I healed myself.
I think healing's working not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and those areas are equally important. I also think that whatever I'm doing in some way gives people permission to heal themselves or indeed to be healed. I think that we just don't know what's going on and what the interactions are.
Whether you believe in it or not, there are still many questions surrounding the power to heal. It's an area of deep controversy and is likely to remain so for many years to come.